Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, April 8th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 520 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we've got some more New York Jets news to discuss. The New York Jets had a top 30 visit with an intriguing wide receiver prospect that we've talked a little bit about already on the show that I want to talk more about today. And if that is an realistic option for the New York Jets, he is rising up draft boards. The Jets visited with him yesterday, so we'll break that down here out of the open. And then I also wanted to dive into Mel Kiper's latest 2-round mock draft, 2 picks for the New York Jets. Of course, that's 7th overall, and then their 2nd round pick, 42nd overall. Wanted to react both of those and discuss both of the prospects that Mel Kiper, ESPN draft analyst, has going to the New York Jets in his latest mock draft. So a draft-centric episode today on a Tuesday program. As always, though, before we begin, we've got to get into our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to get in on any of the sports betting action, check out BetUS and use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you want any of the hottest tickets in sports or entertainment, check them out. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, use code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their new arrival hats or sweatshirts or original collections, check them out and use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase and get yourself some awesome Huga House swag. So here we go, episode 520. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. 2 episodes yesterday, another episode today, just 16 days away from the NFL draft. So an exciting time of year here in the off season as we get closer and closer to the draft and all of that good stuff as well that comes after it. And today I wanted to break down more draft prospects with connections here to the Jets, obviously top 30 visit, which we'll get to here in a second, and in the 2 prospects that Mel Kiper has the Jets taking in the first 2 rounds in his latest mock draft. And I want to start with the top 30 visit. So it was reported earlier today, Jordan Schultz, Tony Pauline also reported it yesterday as well. So 2 reports on it, that Kyle Williams, wide receiver out of Washington State, had a top 30 visit with the Jets yesterday. He's also got some other visits lined up. The Texans tomorrow and the Titans he visited with today. So obviously a wide range of interest around the league. And Kyle Williams is a really intriguing prospect who we actually talked about on Monday in our most recent mock draft Monday. I selected Kyle Williams on day number 3. And it feels like now over the last 24 hours, especially since this news came out with the Jets, Kyle Williams is building up some steam here. And I mentioned it on the episode on Monday, which I actually recorded Sunday night and posted it Monday morning. I mentioned in that episode, I really like Kyle Williams. He was one of there's a couple guys that I could see going in day 3 from a wide receiver perspective that I would really be on board with the Jets taking. Even if they took a wide receiver on one of the first 2 days, I would be open to somebody like a Nick Nash. And Kyle Williams was another guy who I talked about as well as an intriguing day 3 prospect that I really like, that I think you could get good value for on day 3. And now we've gotten to the point where he's rising up draft boards. His stock is increasing. Really, this entire draft period, over the last couple months, Kyle Williams has been projected to go like third round, round 4, or round 5. But most recently, you're seeing mock drafts have him go upwards near day 2, round 2, even round 3. So really interesting to see where he ends up falling, and a really intriguing prospect because there's obviously intrigue around the league. The Jets obviously have some interest bringing him in for a top 30 visit, and there'll be a handful of visits the rest of this month around the league with various different prospects as teams finalize their draft boards and finalize what they want to do when draft night rolls around here 16 days from this recording. But Kyle Williams is a guy that I think Jets fans should get to know a little bit. 5'11", 190 pounds, senior out of Washington State, like I said. Played 5 years in college football. First 3 were at UNLV, then transferred to Washington State, where he's taken off the last 2 years. You look at his numbers combined the last 2 seasons, 131 receptions, 2,040 yards, 15.5 yards per reception, and 20 touchdowns. When you look at his numbers just specifically to last year, where he had a career high in every statistical category, 70 receptions, 1,198 yards, so just a tick under the 1,200-yard mark, 17.1 yards per reception, and a whopping 14 touchdowns. I also thought this was interesting, and I understand the Pac-12, right, got demolished, and it was essentially the Pac-2 last year with Washington State and Oregon State. But in that Pac-2, Kyle Williams led the conference in yards, and he was also 8th in college football in yards. So this was a guy that last season was top 10 in yards in the nation, was also upwards near the top in touchdowns with those 14 in the nation as well. So just statistically, some numbers that I think really, really impress you when you look at Kyle Williams as a prospect. He also ran a 4.4 40-yard dash, which I think is catching the eye of a lot of teams. And I think that's a reason why he's skyrocketing up draft boards, is that speed that he brings to the table and his threat that he poses for opposing defenses from a deep threat perspective. He's able to stretch the field, able to utilize his speed to his advantage, able to get open in a big way when he utilizes his speed and find holes in the defense. And that's where you're able to look at the film and really see some of that stuff pop up. So a lot to like with him. It really is. And again, do you feel comfortable if the Jets feel comfortable enough taking him day 2, with that, maybe that 3rd round pick, 73rd overall, you have to trust them. If they don't go wide receiver with the first 2 picks, round 1 and then round 2, if they want to go round 3, do you wait and see if he falls through day 3 and ends up going 4th round with that 110th overall pick? Only time will tell. But just some of the PFF numbers last year, 79.9 rather overall grade, an 82.1 receiving grade, 62.5% contested catch rate, and an 89.8 grade against man coverage. Just want to throw some of these other numbers out here. 21 missed tackles forced last year, was tied for 18th in college football. He also had 14 deep catches, which was tied for 10th in college football. And his yards after catch, which was about 8.4, was 15th in college football. He was top 25 with 454 deep yards in college football, and his 232 screen yards were 11th in college football. So this is a guy, in my opinion, that can beat you in a variety of different ways. And he could stretch the field. And that's something that this Jets offense needs. They need a guy that can stretch the field. They need a guy that can go deep, make plays deep. We talk about it all the time. This has been a 10-yard box offense that just doesn't do a whole lot. Like, they don't stretch the field. They don't take chances. Ideally, Fields take some chances. Yes, they're going to be a run-first offense, but when you are set up in positions where you need to pass, take some risks, take some chances, and have guys downfield that can make plays, Kyle Williams is one of those guys. He can do it short, can do it intermediate, and can also make some plays downfield. So again, you look at some of the strengths, right? Big plays, yak ability. I actually think his yak ability is kind of underrated. He's not talked about really that much, but you combine his speed and you watch him play, like it pops off when you look at the film, and he was top 15 in college football in yards after the catch last year among qualified receivers. So it is a strength of his. Can make guys miss in the open field, very elusive, quick feet kind of in that way, soft feet, that's kind of like the phrase, can make guys miss. Is an X receiver, so will pair nicely there on the outside with Garrett, and very good at tracking the football. I think that's one of the areas where he's excels from a deep ball perspective. Can track the football, can make plays, can run underneath it, do whatever he needs to do, and do some damage from that perspective. Some of the weaknesses, things that he will need to work on. Not the greatest blocker. You look at 5'11", 190 pounds, you're not going to really expect the receiver to be that good of a blocker. And that's really one of the biggest things with Kyle Williams. He is on the smaller end, and he can struggle against physical corners. And that is probably one of the biggest things that would tank his draft stock, is just how will he adapt to the physicality level in the NFL when he faces a physical corner that is kind of, pushing him around a little bit, handsy with him. Like, how is he going to be able to react to that? That's one of the biggest question marks, because he's only 5'11", 190 pounds. And he could beat you with speed, but is he going to be able to beat you with physicality? Not necessarily really known. Probably something that won't happen. So how does he adapt in the NFL? And can at times struggle with drops. Like, he did have a 6.7% drop rate last year, which was slightly below average to about average. So hands-wise, maybe work on that a little bit, but it's not like drops, in my opinion, is a glaring problem. But it is something that you'd probably want to look at, and could probably improve the route tree a bit. But I also think schematically, too, you put him in the right scheme, that can improve. But I like Kyle Williams. I do. We'll see how much the Jets like him. But he's a prospect that's gaining a lot of steam here. We're talking about a guy that for a while seemed like 4th round, 5th round pick, kind of maybe a draft steal, to all of a sudden you're seeing some mock drafts I saw earlier today have him going 2nd round. So we're talking about a whole day earlier and about 2 rounds earlier than recently projected. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Kyle Williams, and obviously how the Jets approach the draft. If you take a wide receiver round 1, are you going to still take him late? Like, do the Jets love him enough where they maybe go tight end, tackle, whatever the first 2 picks, then take him 3rd round? Only time will tell to see where Kyle Williams eventually falls into place. But an intriguing prospect, and definitely something to keep your eye on here as the Jets have that top 30 visit. So I want to move on now to 2 other draft topics involving 2 different players. So Mel Kiper, last week, Field Yates revealed his mock draft, talked about it. It was a 2-round mock draft. This week, want to discuss Mel Kiper's 2-round mock draft that he released. And that's when you're getting close to draft, is when all these experts start to reveal, these analysts reveal their 2-round mock drafts, and eventually you'll get your full 7-round mock drafts. That's when you're getting closer. So Mel Kiper earlier today released his and wanted to break down both these picks. So round 1, pick number 7, not much of a surprise. A lot of the latest mock drafts have the Jets going in this direction, and that is Armand Membu. And if you had to ask me right now who the Jets are going to take at number 7, I would probably say, if I had to bet and make a prediction, it would be Armand Membu. Here's what Mel Kiper had to say. Membu is a powerful and quick, and he started 30 games at right tackle in college. It would make a lot of sense for the Jets to pop him into the lineup there with 2024 first rounder Olu Fashanu manning the left side. They signed quarterback Justin Fields, who has the league's 2nd highest sack rate since being drafted in 2021, 10.5%. For this to work, the offensive line has to be good. I considered Penn State tight end, Tyler Warren here. He can line up all over the offense and give Fields a reliable outlet when the pressure does come. Once the ball is in his hands, he'd pick up chunks of yardage. But I don't think New York is going to ignore the O-line. And that seems to be the consensus. It feels like we're heading in that trajectory of, if you had to make a prediction, it's going to be Armand Membu. And if it's not Membu, it's probably Tyler Warren. It feels like the closer and closer we get, it doesn't feel like the Jets are going to go defense. And it just seems like in general, there's kind of this, just seems like Tet McMillan is kind of gone by the wayside in a way. Like you just haven't seen too many mocks, and I know it's all mock drafts, all predictions, but I don't know. I think it's probably Warren or Membu, and then, or just trade back scenario, and then you address receiver day 2, day 3. That feels like where they're heading. We've talked a lot about Membu. I don't want to spend a ton of time because we've talked a lot about him. But again, 6'4", 332 pounds, junior, very, solid combine. That's one of the things with Membu. You want to put that as a concern or a positive. Sometimes when guys do really well in the offseason leading up to the draft, people wonder if that's the right pick to make because, a lot of times you see guys have great combines. Everyone hypes them up and they don't pan out to anything. But Membu did have a very good combine. He's had a very good, from when their season ended at Missouri to where we are now, he's put together a very, very good kind of draft performance up to this point. Good combine, very athletic. You look at some of just the PFF numbers. He also had a very good year at Missouri. I like Membu a lot. I do. I think you watch the tape, you look at the numbers, you look at what he was able to do at the combine, look at his athleticism, look at where he plays. Again, the Jets need a right tackle. Membu steps in right away at right tackle. You don't have to worry about molding one of these left tackles in this draft to right tackle. You get your right tackle who can step in right away. And I'll also just say this. This hasn't been talked about much, but it is a factor in the fact of the Jets maybe wanting to go offensive line. You look at the Jets offensive line right now. As much as we look at it and we do say, oh, everybody's under 27 or 27 or younger, right? Simpson's the oldest player on this offensive line. He's only 27 years old. And we can look at it and say, look at all this young talent. The Jets do find themselves in a situation, or will find themselves in a situation next offseason where they're going to need to pay John Simpson and ABT, right? ABT is going to be a free agent. John Simpson on the 2-year deal will also be a free agent. So if you don't get Membu, and then Simpson and ABT are free agents next year, all of a sudden you could look at this offensive line in a year from now and start to have some questions, have some concerns. So you could see the Jets' perspective of, okay, these two guys are free agents in the interior next year. Let's lock up, get our 2 bookend tackles, Olu on the left side, Membu on the right side, solidify those, and then figure out the interior, as opposed to potentially finding yourself in a position next year where you're all over the place. 2 new guards or re-signing guards, then still needing a tackle if a mid-round tackle doesn't work this year or whatever. So I could see that being part of the Jets' thought process. He had a 90.6 Pro Football Focus grade. I think he's good against the run. I think he's good against the pass. If you had to think of a strength, it probably would be his run blocking. He probably could improve a little bit as a pass protector, but I still think he's overall like a good player. I don't really think either of those is a weakness. You'll sometimes see offensive linemen, right, really good as run blockers, poor as pass protectors. I think Membu is solid. Like, I think he's good at both. Good hands and body control in pass pro, and very athletic, which I think is something that translates. Talk about some of the weaknesses. Can struggle against guys that bull rush, those type of bull rushers, which you'll see some of those in the NFL. And his size, he's not the tallest. I mean, he's only 6'4". How does that translate? But again, I mean, you're talking about one of the better tackles in this draft. You're talking about a guy that comes in and fills a need right away. So that's Membu. Now, the other pick here that Mel Kiper had the New York Jets drafting, 2nd round, 42nd overall pick. He had him going Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. And this was his reasoning. No Tyler Warren for the Jets in round 1, but getting a top offensive tackle in the class in Armand Membu, and then landing Arroyo in the 2nd round as a win. Arroyo can stretch the field for Justin Fields, and at 6'5", 250 pounds, no one can cover him. New York can line him up all over and then uncork 50-50 balls to him to haul in. This is back-to-back week now where we have seen both analysts, Field Yates and Mel Kiper here, predict the Jets going tight end with this 2nd round pick. And that obviously is all dependent on what they do in round 1. If they go Warren, you're not going tight end 2nd round. But if they don't go Warren and they go Membu, Mason Taylor, Arroyo, You want to throw Terrence Ferguson into the mix, Harold Fannin Jr., although I think those guys are more third round. That's 73rd overall pick. You could see them there. Gunnar Helm, probably maybe even day 3. Pick whatever day 2, day 3 tight end you want. And this is a deep tight end class. All of these tight ends are different in the fact that you got some of these guys that are your blocking tight ends, some guys that are your receiving tight ends, some guys that are kind of a mix of both. When you look at Arroyo, you're looking at a receiving tight end. You're looking at essentially a bigger slot, right? Kiper mentioned it. I'll say it again. 6'5", 250, tall, big, physical, strong, just essentially a bigger slot. Not really a guy that's going to block a ton. Can you develop him and, ideally he turns into a better blocker? Yes. But you're mainly looking at a guy that's going to be a receiving threat from the tight end spot, not much of a blocker, right? A redshirt junior, you look at his numbers last year, 2024 season, 35 receptions, 590 yards, 16.9 yards per reception, and 7 touchdowns. 71.7 overall grade, 73.6 receiving grade, 2.8% drop rate, which was well above average. That's good. Some of his other numbers, he had 8 deep catches downfield last year, which was tied for 4th among tight ends in college football. He also had 8.9 yards after catch, which was 7th. 4th in deep yards with 255. And I thought this was also an interesting number because I'm kind of geeky and I like to break down these numbers. But his average depth of target last year was 11.1, which was tied for 16. So top 20 among tight ends with 25 plus targets. And I think that's interesting because, again, we talk about Arroyo and we talk about stretching the field. He was able to do that last year. He had the 8 deep catches, had 255 deep yards. It has an ability to pick up yards after the catch, right? He essentially had 9 yards after the catch last year on average, which was 7th, 8.9. So round that up. But average depth of target as well. Quarterbacks look for him downfield. Find him down the seam. And we talked about Kyle Williams. Throw Arroyo in this mix. I can understand where the Jets could be coming from with wanting guys that could stretch the field, wanting guys that could take, allow quarterbacks to take chances, get open. Arroyo, we mentioned, being that bigger slot, can get up one-on-one, contested catches, make those plays. That could certainly be something that benefits the Jets offense. The biggest question is are you okay with taking him in the second round? And also you have to weigh how big is the drop off from Warren, even a Loveland to the rest of these guys. And you have to weigh that with Membu as well, right? The tackle class and the tight end class are 2 pretty deep classes. So you have to weigh the first round tackles and the first round tight ends you're looking at versus your day 2 options. What's the difference? And if they like Arroyo or like a Mason Taylor that much to say, we'll take him round 2, then you do it. I think Arroyo honestly could maybe fall. Mason Taylor too maybe could fall a little bit further than 42, but only time will tell. So again, some strengths, receiving, very athletic for his size, 6'5", 250. You don't necessarily always see tight ends that size be the most athletic. He is, which I think is intriguing. And I also throw this out there. Very good hands. Last year, he had 50 targets. He only had 1 drop, which I thought was something of note, something that hopefully he could potentially carry into the NFL. The areas of weakness, blocking, right? We talked about that. You're looking at a bigger slot. You're not looking at much of a blocker. Can that change? Probably not. That's kind of just the way he is. There's, again, you look at the tight ends in this class, you have your mix, you have your bigger slots, you have your blockers. This is essentially a bigger slot. And at one other area too, he's inexperienced. I mean, again, he's a redshirt junior. He does have, multiple seasons of college football under his belt. But this is a guy that only had 1 year as a starter at Miami, and that was last year. So he's a bit inexperienced. You're really only going off of 1 year as a starter with Cam Ward. So that is a little bit of a risk. Only 1 year, not a guy that's had 2-3 years of starting experience under his belt. How much does that affect the development? Who knows, but something else to keep an eye on. So that's Elijah Arroyo. Him, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, one of them, if I had to guess, if they don't go Tyler Warren, one of those guys will be a New York Jet. Sometime on day 2. When? We'll find that out here in about 17 days, because day 2 is 17 days, day 1, 16 days now. So that's another episode. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. You buying in to the Kyle Williams hype? Where do you think he lands? What are your thoughts on him coming in as a top 30 visit? And what are your thoughts on Mel Kiper's latest 2-round mock draft? Armand Membu, Elijah Arroyo. If 42 picks into the draft this year, those are the 2 players on the New York Jets. Would be your thoughts in that moment? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. We'll be back with a lot more content coming your way. As always, until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.